Hi, and welcome to the 5th 6 weeks curriculum preview for 4th grade science. Today we're going to talk a little bit about organisms in the environment, and this is going to be the first part of the focus on the wetland biome. Over on the right-hand side, you're going to see an infographic that you might have noticed in your science lab. This was produced last year to kind of help us understand how the different biomes align vertically through the grade levels. So we're going to talk about that in just a second and make sure we're clear about how the wetlands fit into our life science standards. Before we do that, let me just remind you about the documents that we will use when we talk about planning for this 6 weeks. As always, we're going to use the unit overview and the pacing guide, and I'm also going to refer to the units of study, which is located in that top yellow arrow, and just talk about the life science unit for the 5th 6 weeks as well as the 4th 6 weeks. Okay, so let's get started with taking a view of the whole year. This is the units of study that can be found in Forethought, and it's kind of a year at a glance. And I want to just focus in on the 5th 6 weeks and the 6th 6 weeks and talk about that. So let's focus in on that for just a second. So we don't have a ton of life science standards in these 2 6 weeks, and so even though we don't have a lot of content standards, they are very dense, and there's different parts of them that we focus on in different 6 weeks. So I just want to point out that in the 5th 6 weeks, we have some process skills that we're going to be using, models, and collecting information. And then we're going to be talking about producers and consumers, and then the flow of energy and food webs. And then we're going to be looking at life cycles, but in the 5th 6 weeks, life cycles of plants. So specifically radishes and lima beans. And you should have gotten notification that those seeds are in for your use when you're ready for those. And then in the 6 6 weeks, we are going to be focusing on looking at patterns and then critiquing scientific explanations. And then with the content, we're going to be looking at adaptations. We're going to be looking at inherited traits, and then we're going to come back to the life cycles, but this time we're going to focus on the two animals that are listed in that standard, butterflies and beetles. And you should have also received your butterfly coupons for your painted lady butterflies, as well as information about those resources. You'll notice that there's no mention of the wetlands in any of the standards, and so I wanted to make sure that there was a clear understanding of how the wetlands relates into these 2 6 weeks, and that's explained here on the right hand side. And there's actually two different ways that you can apply your life science standards to wetlands, and that's what we're going to talk about today. Okay, so let's kind of go back and look and see where 4th grade fits into this. So as I mentioned, this infographic was really designed to help understand vertically how the different biomes relate to the alignment as students move through kindergarten all the way up to 5th grade. And in 4th grade, we take 2 6 weeks to look at the wetlands or freshwater aquatic biomes. So I'm going to take a little bit closer look here, and you'll see right here it kind of refers to 4th grade, and you'll probably recognize this poster. You received those last year. But basically, all of the life science standards are going to be introduced in any kind of environment. So not necessarily starting off with the wetland or having everything be looked at through the wetland lens. But as we learn the life science standards, then we can take a specialized look, a specialized view of what does that look like in the wetlands. So this is just an excerpt from the scope and sequence to kind of help clarify that. But let's take a closer look at that in our documents. Okay, so the pacing guide for Unit 5, you have two options, and these same two options are also available for Unit 6. I introduced these two options last year, and the feedback that I got from most teachers was that they really appreciated having a choice and the clarity of laying out two different plans. And this is really completely up to you or you and your team on how you want to address it. And I'm going to take you through both options, and to make it easier to visualize where the wetlands fit in, I'm going to use this little icon. And this is only in the presentation. You won't find this on the documents, but that little icon represents where you're going to be specifically looking at the wetlands as you move through the different standards. Okay, so let's take a look at option one. This is just a close-up view of option one that we were looking at on the last screen. So you'll see that the unit is chunked into these different areas of about 5 to 7 days, and we start off with 4.9a, and you'll notice that it's listed there twice. 4.9a is a very dense, very thick standard, and so we're going to take 5 days to take the first part of that standard, focusing on producers, and then really that's about photosynthesis. And then we're going to take an additional 5 days to talk about consumers and how they get their food. And so even though it's one standard, we're going to split this up into 2 5-day sections. For option one, the way that this would work is that you would introduce, let's just say we're going to focus on the producers and photosynthesis. We're going to introduce that in a variety of environments and biomes, really whatever in STEM scopes and aims, be it a park or using a flower or a tree, we're going to use that. But then as the students start to go through the first 3 days of the 5E, then we can start to say, okay, now let's see what this looks like in a wetland environment. So on the day that you would hit the elaborate, you would take a closer look at, well, what are some producers that specifically live in the wetlands? And do they make their food in the way as other producers? So we're taking almost just like a specialized view or specialized application in the wetland. And then when we assess, we'll use a variety of environments. So you might want to take a moment to pause and just kind of look at the example here, and then we'll go through it a little bit more on the next screen. Okay, so let's take a look at the pacing guide for option one. What you'll see on the left-hand side of the screen in the center is a screenshot for the 6 weeks. I've got it bracketed. It starts on the 27th of March, and then it ends on the April 13th. I've also blocked out the Science CBA Day, which is the 29th of March, and then the 2 days for writing STAR, so we can really see how many days of instruction that we had. So going back to option one, that would be an example of how you would plan for these first 5 days. So you have 4 days in the first week, and to do a 5-day plan for the 5E, you might want to extend that onto the 6th, or you could compact that into the 4 days, whatever you would choose. So generally with the option one, what this might look like was looking at that photosynthesis standard through whatever biomes and environment has for STEM scopes and aims. Then we look at it in the wetland lens, and then we evaluate in a variety of biomes and environments. So that's what would this first week would generally look like. So every standard, we learn about it, we take a little look into the wetlands, and then we evaluate, and then we move on to the next standard. Here's a more detailed view of what that 5-day lesson plan might look like. So at the top, you'll see the standard, and you'll notice that I have highlighted in blue the part that we're going to focus on, because 4.9a is split into 2 5-day plans. And so we're going to focus on that first part there. And so here would be a 5-day sample plan, and you'll see our little icon over here when we get to elaborate. That's where the wetland view would come in. So this is just a sample lesson plan using STEM scopes and aims and the other resources that are in Forethought to help illustrate how pacing guide for option one would work. There's a lot on this screen, so if you'd like to come back to it or pause it, you can take a look at that in more detail. Okay, so let's take a look at the second option. The second option really compacts all of the standards into 4 weeks. So you would cover all of the standards for the 6 weeks in 4 weeks, and you really wouldn't talk about the wetlands at all. So you would just move through all of the standards using whatever is in STEM scopes and aims. What that does is that opens up about 10 days at the end of the 6 weeks if you wanted to do an in-depth research project, some sort of inquiry investigation, or any other project where you would need a big bulk of time to look at those standards through the wetland. So option two is really going to allow you to go more in depth for a longer amount of time for the wetlands. You're still covering all the same standards, Option 1, you're just kind of peeking in every week about what that would look like in the wetlands. But option 2, you're not even going to talk about the wetlands until the end of the 6 weeks, where you can go in more in depth. So again, here's a little bit more detailed pacing of how option 2 would look, and you'll see that there's no mention of the wetlands at all until you get to those last days, and then you could do a research project. And there's tons of resources in Forethought that I've selected for you for either option 1 or option 2. If you look in STEM Scopes and AIMS, you won't find a ton of wetland specific examples, but because we've created these 2 options, I have some supplemental resources for you. So now that we've kind of gone over the 2 options, once you've decided which path you're going to go down, you'll want to be sure that you're clear about where to find resources, no matter which option you're going to take. So of course, I'm going to refer you to the unit overview and then also in Forethought. There's detailed information here about where to find different resources, not only to introduce the standard, but also to look at in the wetland view. So again, I've always got some background information about the process skills, and then what really you should be focusing on with producers and consumers and food webs. I've got an anchor chart in there, so those will be helpful for you, especially if you're new to 4th grade or 4th grade science. And then also, don't forget to look for this last column over here, because this is going to be where you find most of the wetland connections. And these will be listed, if they're a website, there'll be a live link here in the unit overview, but some of them are Word documents or PDFs, so those will be in Forethought. So again, these are all in Forethought as well, but I just wanted you to know these are going to be where most of your wetland connections are going to be. In addition, I've got a couple of field trip connections up here. That would be nice field trips. If you're going to be looking for a wetland example, those are 2 great places. So I mentioned the additional resources for wetlands, so I just wanted to show you a screenshot of where to find those. So they're under the standard, but there's also larger units that couldn't really be broken down into a standard, and so those are under the unit overview. And there's more than you could ever do in here. So this could be where you could kind of pick and choose, especially if you're wanting to do that long-term 10-day project. This would be a great place for you to go. So they're under the unit overview, and then they're attached under here. These are big, large resources for wetlands. Okay, so I hope that that was helpful for you to kind of get the overview. I know that went really fast, and so I had lots of screenshots, so I'll actually put a PDF copy of this PowerPoint back in Canvas if you'd like to just look at that without me talking over it, so you can kind of see those. But I want to end up talking a little bit about one more resource that I have back in Canvas for you, and it's a new s'more that I've created that I think you'll find very useful. So when you go back into Canvas and you click on the s'more or the s'more description, you're going to see a s'more that looks like this. And this time of year, it's really great to start looking ahead for the spring and the summer at some opportunities that are coming up, not only for your students, but for you as a teacher as well. And so I've compiled these all in one place with some live links. So just a quick overview, there's information about Minicast, which is in Hazlitt this year, which is a one-day conference for science teaching. It's always a great resource, so there's some information in the registration for that. There's also a lot of really cool STEM opportunities in the area, both in Dallas at the Perot as well as the Fort Worth Science Museum. All of those are free. They will fill up very fast, and there's opportunities for camps for kids as well as camps for educators. So if that's something that you're looking for, you might want to check those out pretty quickly. There's also some really great resources at BRIT, which is located in Fort Worth, and they always have wonderful things for life science. At the very bottom of this more, I've also created a little visual glossary or a visual guide for all kinds of resources that are in your science lab, and then also some field trip connections. So if you click on here, it will open up a PowerPoint that is really just a visual guide, like I said before, that really shows some things that are available. I have delivered a lot of new things this year to your campus, and so I wanted to be sure that you knew about those, and that's the purpose of this. So there's some new biome flip charts, which includes some information about wetlands, so that's new this year, and that's in your science lab. Last year I delivered some posters, and there's an aquatic poster in there for 4th grade. So I'll just kind of flip through. You can go through those yourself, but I just want to be sure that you knew what was available specifically for your grade level as well. And there's the seeds, and that's what kind of what they look like, and those were just delivered. And then here's for fourth grade, your butterfly life cycle. So we have a nice model of the butterfly, you have habitats, and then you have a coupon that looks like this that was sent to you. And you can do that online using that little number that's blacked out to order those when you're ready. So again, Delta readers and some of the Lakeshore kits that are available for you. So that's what's in there. And then the very last slide has a link to a field trip planning guide and a list of field trip places if you're looking for some places to go this summer for your life sciences. So just as a wrap up, you'll find that s'more as well as that link to that PowerPoint right back in Canvas. And I think you'll find another little goodie in there if you take a look around, a couple of lessons that I've gotten there for you as well. I hope this was helpful for you. Please let me know if there's any other way I can help you or support your instruction. And thanks for joining me. I hope you have a great day.